Bridget Cleary, maiden name Bridget Boland, was born around 1869 in Ballyvidlee, County Tipperary, Ireland. In 1887 she married Michael Cleary. Michael worked as a cooper and she served as a dressmaker's apprentice. Following their marriage, Bridget returned to her parents' house while Michael continued to work in Clonmel. And during this period, Bridget's independence grew. She kept a flock of chickens and sold the eggs to the neighbours, and she was also seen as a professional woman, something that was very uncommon for this time and place. She purchased a Singer sewing machine and was variously described as both a dressmaker and milliner. Following the death of her mother, the Clearys found themselves responsible for Bridget's elderly father, Patrick Boland. With him in their care, Michael and Bridget were able to secure a house reserved for labourers. Neither Bridget or Michael were entitled to the cottage, but as Patrick had been a labourer in his younger years, they were able to acquire the best house in the village. The house held no widespread interest as it was supposedly built on a fairy ring fort. In March 1895, Bridget was reported missing. She had evidently been ill for a number of days, although it's unknown what her diagnosis was. More than a week into the illness, on March 13th, a physician visited her at her home, where it was determined that her condition was so bad that a priest soon followed to give her the last rites. Many family and friends visited her and a number of home remedies were given, including one ritual that anticipated her later demise. Her father and her husband accused her of being a fairy sent to take Bridget's place. Urine was thrown on her and she was carried before the fireplace to cast the fairy out. By March 16th, rumours began to circulate that Bridget was missing, and the local police began looking for her. Michael was quoted as claiming that his wife had been taken by fairies, and when he appeared to be holding a vigil, witnesses' statements were gathered over the ensuing week, and by the time Bridget Cleary's burnt corpse was found in a shallow grave on March 22nd, 9 people had been charged with her disappearance, including her husband. Her cause of death was officially recorded as death by burning. Legal hearings began on April 1st and lasted till April 16th, and a 10th person was charged, and one of the original 9 were discharged, leaving 9 defendants bound for trial. Court sessions began on July 3rd, and the jury indicted 5 of the defendants for murder, including husband Michael. All 9 were indicted on charges of wounding. Evidence showed that on March 15th, Michael summoned Father Ryan back to the Cleary household. Ryan found Bridget alive but agitated. Michael told the priest that he had not been giving his wife the medicine prescribed by the doctor because he had no faith in it. According to Father Ryan, Cleary then said people may have some remedy of their own that might do more good than doctor's medicine, or something to that effect. Bridget was given communion and Ryan departed. Later that night, neighbours and relatives returned to the Cleary house. An argument ensued again, lined with fairy mythology. At some point, Bridget told Michael that the only person who'd gone off with the fairies had been his mother. Michael attempted to force-feed his wife, throwing her down on the ground before the kitchen fireplace and menacing her with a burning piece of wood. Bridget's garment caught fire, and Michael then threw lamp oil on her. The witnesses were unclear as to whether she was already dead by this point. Michael kept the others back from her body as it burned, insisting that she was a changeling and had been for a week previously, and that he would get his wife back from the fairies. Her cousin Joanna Burke describes how when she paid the family a visit, she found 26-year-old Bridget being held down and force-fed a concoction of herbs and milk, and that the men restraining her were her brothers, an elderly neighbour named John Dunn, and her husband. By March 14th, he had also sent for herbs gleaned from a witch doctor type named Dennis Gainey. By that stage, Michael was gripped with the belief that she was a changeling. According to a court report in the Irish Times on March 27, 1895, Joanna said that the men forced Bridget to take the herbs, and Cleary asked her, "Are you Bridget Boland, the wife of Michael Cleary, in the name of God?" She answered twice but refused to answer a third time, and this is when her husband hauled her up and held her in a sitting position over the slow-burning embers of the fire. Joanna is quoted as saying, "She seemed wild and deranged, especially while they were treating her." She apparently also responded with, "I am Bridget Boland, daughter of Pat Boland in the name of God," referring to her maiden name and notably leaving out her link to her husband. As part of the trial, the jury were led out to the storage building where Bridget's body was being held for burial and where it was available for viewing. The jury were given the opportunity to see the condition of the body and the extent of her injuries as well, as to personally verify that the body was indeed Bridget's by looking upon her face. What the jury witnessed in the outbuilding convinced them of the horrible suffering Bridget had endured prior to her death. Michael was found guilty of manslaughter and spent 15 years in prison. He was released from Maryborough, now Portlaoise Prison, on April 28, 1910 and went to Liverpool. On October 14, 1910, a black bordered letter was sent from the office of the Secretary of State, Home Department, Whitehall, to the Undersecretary in Dublin Castle, stating that Michael had emigrated from Liverpool to Montreal on June 30th, and charges against some of his defendants were dropped, but 4 were convicted of wounding. Bridget's death was well known in the area, and a famous Irish nursery rhyme reads, "Are you a witch, are you a fairy, or are you the wife of Michael Cleary?" She also has been described as the last witch of Ireland, however she was never accused of witchcraft. Bridget's murder was certainly not the first to be carried out due to this belief of changelings, but it is the last high-profile case on record. I'll be back again with a new video tomorrow and every day this month. Gar Margaret.